welcome to the Business of Life. I have a question for you. When was the last time you checked your work email? Maybe you're checking it right now while you're watching this program. That's okay, I get it, because there's no such thing as checking out anymore. In our new connected work lives, we're on call 24/7. But maybe that's a good thing. We're working differently and maybe we work smarter. The question is, how can you succeed in your professional life without burning out in your personal life? Tonight we're going to find out, and as always, we'll break down the issues in facts, figures, dollars and cents. I'm joined by a panel of highly qualified experts eager to answer the question, what is the business of work? Let's start with our first statistic. More than 50%, that's the share of young people who are, quote, not engaged in their jobs. That means they just don't care. They go from hell 1 at home to hell 2 at work. They do show up on time and get their work done, but then they just switch off. Wait though, if that doesn't sound bad to you, another 16% of young people say they're actively disengaged. That means they're involved in deliberate sabotage against their jobs. They see problems, know the solution, but don't offer it. They steal from work, hurt themselves and those around them, and they want to make their co-workers' lives miserable. Indira, this is absolutely nuts. Why are we acting like this?
First of all, I think people have always acted a bit like that, but I also think we're in a moment, like you said, where there's so much happening all the time that it's really easy to feel like work is just a small part of it, and because not all workplaces are really good about making you feel like you're part of a family and they need you and want you, it's easy to say, you know, I'm not into this.
I own a research firm that studies the workforce as well as consumers, and we know for a fact that the majority of all managers in America, and this is really important, all managers, the majority of all of them are millennials. So while we're saying that millennials are unengaged, it's not just a generational thing. These are our own peers that are also managing us. And what I think has changed is all of us are so used to being connected constantly. Engagement for us is quick feedback, quick hits. I want to know what's going on, be a part of this. And a lot of companies simply can't do that in the way their company is built.
I want to ask the audience here, anyone willing to talk about like a job where they felt actively disengaged because they hated it so much? Yeah?
I wouldn't quite say that I'm actively disengaged, but I'm more so disencouraged with my job. I do work for a nonprofit organization, and I do feel like their structure in business is very poor because there's no incentives for the employee.
Yeah,
nonprofits are notoriously bad at this. They don't want to lose you, and if you go and sort of help them recognize where you're struggling and really prove that you're committed to the organizational mission, I think there's a lot of great stuff that can happen.
If you're feeling this way within the organization, I bet you there's other people too. And you're shaking your head, yeah. See, if you help them solve it, they'll really appreciate this.
Okay, but there are actually other reasons why people are unhappy, and I want to get into some of those now. Let's look at the numbers on paid vacations. 0 days, that's the amount of paid vacation American workers are legally entitled to. Workers back home in the UK, they get 28 days. French workers get 30 days, and Austrian workers get 30 days plus 13 national holidays. Nadira, are we just working ourselves to death? Why did I move over here?
Yeah, map those statistics against what's happening in health with Americans, right?
And there's bigger generational issues here too. Millennials are graduating with more college debt than any previous generation. So now you have people taking jobs that they didn't want because they don't feel they have a choice. Because it's not like, well, I can hang out to find the job I like. I have to take a job right now because I want to eat and have a place to live.
So
They
Neil,
gotta pay their bills.
Right, is the answer to this then, if we won't take the vacation ourselves because we're too frightened to, is the answer mandatory paid vacation?
I'm a workaholic. I can't just work 40 hours a week. I need to work 70. I need to work 80. I hate paid vacations. I hate vacations, period. In our organization, we don't have a holiday policy. You don't want to work, don't work.
I don't know about that. I want to check with the people that are here in this room right now. How many people have got a policy like Neil's company has, where you can just take off as much work as you want to? Okay, no one. That's pretty rare. Okay, let's go to our next step. Nearly half of adults in the US have participated in the gig economy. All right, let's start off really basic. Nadira, what is the gig economy?
It's all of us having gigs,
okay.
Right? Like, it's not the going to work in a traditional environment and staying there for 30 years. And it actually used to be that people were very concerned that millennials were changing that and that we wouldn't want to stay at companies, but now that's more the norm. Right, across the board.
Yeah, the way we would define the gig economy would be taking short-term assignments. Not necessarily a good thing for millennials, because it gives them a lot of options, but it can be harder to build a long-term career if you're not with a single company over a longer period of time.
The biggest problem with it is there's seasonality, there's trends, there's things that happen that you can't control.
If a young person were to ask you right now, should I work in the gig economy or should I take a full-time job?
If you don't have a lot of responsibilities, you want to have fun, you want to travel, see the world, you're not worried about...
So it's less financially secure?
Yes.
Well, I would actually disagree with Neil, who I still love. And I would say pretty much any millennial should have something going on the side, whatever that is. You want to be an artist, you want to be a writer, you want to start your own business. And the reason is you develop those skills, you build relationships, you can create stability flexibility as long as you're doing it on the side. But if you think that that's going to be your main thing and your only thing, you're setting yourself up for a pretty risky trajectory, right?
Wait, is that realistic? We've just talked about how people don't clock off, they're working 24/7. And now you're saying they need a side hustle too?
But you're doing it for yourself. And that is the difference, right? If you are side hustling because your job makes your life miserable and that you have no choice, that's a completely different thing. But that's what the gig economy is. It's a puzzle, but it's your puzzle. You have to put it together.
All right, I want to see if there are any other questions from the audience right now. Who else has a question? Hello.
Hi, I'm Lisa. So I have a lot of friends who are pursuing master's degrees to try to get ahead, but it kind of feels like a scam to me because it's a big investment. So what do you guys think?
Neil, do you think grad school is a waste of time?
There's a lot of jobs out there in careers where it doesn't matter if you have a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or PhD, you can learn from experience. And I do believe in most cases, not all, but learning from experience is much better than going to school.
Now, I will tell you there are positions that you have to have a master's for or PhD, and if those are the positions you want, you kind of have to check the box. So I think that's really the question, is not just the cost of it, not just the time commitment, but that end result on the other side of it. What do you want to do with that? And then if you have to get the MBA, get the MBA. And if not, do it your way.
I do want to talk about other ways that the workplace is changing, though, because along with working lots of short-term gigs, more people than ever are working from home. 37% of employees say they telecommuted in 2015. That number was just 9% in 1995. Okay, Neil, what's telecommuting?
Telecommuting is you can work from anywhere. You can work from home, you can work in a hotel room, you can work from wherever you want in the world. That's telecommuting.
As long as you're accessible.
Yes, and sometimes you will have to go into the office, right?
Sounds like a great way to work, is it?
I think it is.
No, Jason totally disagrees.
I'm the first one to disagree on this one. The risk for millennials, because I want to go back to our generation, is that millennials who telecommute often do not get promoted as fast. And the reason is, millennials think, oh, I'm still getting work done. But bosses don't often see it that way.
Telecommuting works when people already know how fantastic you are, right? And that is the reality. But you have to prove all of that first before you can really telecommute effectively and still get a lot out of your career.
Right, let's cap that conversation for now. Bring up the next stat. 10%, that's the share of people who are, quote, concerned about an individual at work they fear could become violent. Have any of you guys ever known anyone like that at work?
I have not.
Would you be willing to say if you did?
No, I would not.
Have you ever been that person?
No, I'm pretty happy.
I mean, it depends what you mean by violent, right? I've definitely worked with people who you feel like have a very short fuse and will overreact to things, and everyone is kind of treading quite carefully around that person. How should they be managed?
What we think is missing is employees often don't feel empowered to go talk to somebody to help them with the situation because they don't want to look weak. Sometimes, frankly, it's a gender issue. Oh, I don't want to play this gender role, whatever that is.
What do you mean by that? Like a woman not wanting to report a man?
So, yeah, a woman wanting to report a man for, threatening them, or maybe even maybe they feel threatened, but they haven't heard it. And these are the kind of things that do need to be reported. And the reason is, if you feel this at work, you cannot be present in your job. And other people probably fear it too. And frankly, when you look at a lot of the episodes of workplace violence, there were often a lot of signs, but nobody acted on it.
Workplace violence?
In our studies, we've seen that the number of people who fear workplace violence or feel unsafe at some point is dramatically higher than anyone would assume.
Yeah. Maybe even aside from violence, the topic to be talking about is sexual harassment in the workplace. Why does sexual harassment not go reported?
Well, if you're the woman reporting that, suddenly people are looking at you like you're a troublemaker.
Right.
And again, this goes back to the bigger issue of structure. We don't talk to women about how empowered they should be at work. We talk to men about not harassing.
Right.
And that's sort of like, if you are being harassed, then that's not actually going to help you. You need to be able to talk about it and be proactive. But we don't have good structures for that. And there's so much retribution against women in the office when they reach out about this that I think sometimes they don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, and there's also, I think, a lack of women in these senior leadership roles. And it's been institutionalized for a long time, which only makes the problem worse.
I want to see if there are any other questions from the audience right now. Hands up, hands up.
Hi, I'm João, and I was actually wondering, at what point does it become too late to change careers?
What you need to think about is not if it's too late, it's a question of how do you transition. It could be taking on some gigs, learning a new skill set, finding what you're passionate about because you may not know, try different things, and then once you figure out what you love, slowly transition into that permanently.
That's some great advice, but unfortunately that does it for this edition of The Business of Life. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us here today, Jason, Adira and Neil, and thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time on The Business of Life. Bye-bye.
Business of Life is made possible by Better Money Habits. It's a free resource that helps you build practical knowledge and take control of your finances. Powered by Bank of America. See more at bettermoneyhabits.com.